against a dynastic control of the supreme leader's position. But given his hardliner positions, this sort of complements, for example, the bringing back of Vahidi, who founded the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, dusted him off and put him back in to head the IRGC when his predecessor was disposed of. So I don't think you can make any declarative, definitive statements right now. I think we're going to have to wait a few days.
And Rami, I do want to ask you that and get your thoughts on that, too. Was this... All right. Thank you both, gentlemen. We're going to just recap our breaking news, and we'll come back to you both in a minute. Stay with us, please. You're watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Here's a reminder of the key development we're talking about this hour. Iran's Assembly of Experts has named Mojtaba Khamenei to replace his father, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. The assembly is calling on the Iranian people to be united and pledge allegiance to the new supreme leader. Ali Khamenei was assassinated in a U.S.-Israeli airstrike just over a week ago.
Well,
all right, we're going to bring our guests back in now that we've given our audience a recap of this breaking news. Rami, to you, for people who thought that maybe the election of the new supreme leader could be the diplomatic off-ramp, whether for the war in general or for some form of de-escalation. Do you see that happening now with this selection?
Thanks for not staying.
Maybe. We can't tell. There's so many unknown factors. But the reality of Iran since 1979, the two realities. First, that the internal power structure works by constant negotiations between different factions, the clerics, the political leaderships, the business community, the Revolutionary Guards, the army. So there's all these different factors, factions that have to negotiate constantly with the supreme leader at the top making the final decision. I think we're going to see more of that happening, and we're not going to see the emergence suddenly of for liberal, democratic, non-clerical elite, which the fantasies in Washington are thinking about. But we also have to remember that the United States made war with the Viet Cong and then negotiated with them. They made war with the Taliban, then they negotiated with them. They tend to make war when they haven't thought through the politics and culture and realities of this war, the battlefield, and then they end up negotiating and leaving. And I think we're going to see something similar here at some point. We don't know what the point is going to be. The damage that's been done by Israel and the U.S. is so severe to the infrastructures, like General Kim had said, the civilian infrastructure. This is going to hurt Iranians for 10 or 15 years. We'll see what the impact that has.
And General Kimmitt, I want to ask you, given what Rami said about this being a defiant selection, how does that hurt the sort of optics of the Israeli and American sort of idea to go to war to get rid of this regime? And now here they have installed basically, the son of the supreme leader that they just assassinated.
Oh, I don't think there was any doubt that America expected that there would be a succession plan and the Assembly of Experts would vote. But at the same time, there is very little question whether they would pick a hardliner or they'd pick a reformist. So again, I think this is just another act in the play as we move on. But personally, I'm glad that, as it used to be said about Bashar al-Assad, we didn't like this guy, but at least we had a telephone number to call. And in this case, it seems that we...
On this breaking news story.
Thank you.
The U.S. Military Central Command has confirmed that a 7th soldier has been killed in the conflict with Iran. Heidi Jo Castro is in Washington, D.C., live for us. So, Heidi, what more can you tell us? What more do we know about this soldier who's been confirmed to have died?
Right, the U.S. Central Command released this information that this service member,
another one dead, we're just getting started,
died overnight, and that they were injured in the initial wave of Iranian retaliatory strikes the day after this war started, and that this service member was injured while stationed in Saudi Arabia.
New leader. He'll be dead soon. Another dead American soldier. Thanks, Trump. Good job. I wonder if he's going to wear his baseball
where the
cap
U.S.
to
does have
the
a
next
military presence. So now this brings the total U.S. military fatality toll of this war to 7. In fact, it was just yesterday that the bodies of the first 6 Army reservists who died in a drone strike in Kuwait arrived back on U.S. soil. President Trump was on hand to receive those bodies, and he also warned at the time that there would be more U.S. military casualties, fatalities as a result of this war.
Not his family, though, right?
Also,
Not his
in
family.
response to the appointment of the new
Everybody
Supreme
else
Leader,
is-
we're still waiting
the fuck
for a
does he care? He's
reaction
golfing
from
again.
Washington, from President
of
Trump.
shit.
However, in recent days, he had referred to Moshtaba Khamenei as a lightweight, saying that the
Trump's a
selection
giant
of
piece
him
of
as
shit.
the next Supreme
He doesn't give
Leader
a fuck
would be
about dead
unacceptable,
Americans.
and
He doesn't
insisting
care.
that
He's
he
golfing.
himself would
Fuck
have
does
a
he care?
role
He's a
in
billionaire.
selecting who this new
His
leader
kid isn't
is.
going to get killed.
Obviously, that has not
His family
appeared to
isn't
be the
going to
case.
war.
And also on television just
What a
this
piece of
morning,
garbage.
prior to the announcement
Absolute
of
piece of
Moshtaba
garbage.
Khamenei's appointment, Trump had said that whoever the Assembly of Experts
What a piece of
selected
shit.
in Tehran would
Trump's a piece
not
of shit.
last very long. Those were
In case
his
people didn't
words
know.
without the U.S.'s approval.
All right, Heidi Jo Castro, thank you very
Unbelievable.
much. Well, I just want to read for you the post on X that CENTCOM put out about this death. Last night, a U.S. service member passed away from injuries received during the Iranian regime's initial attacks across the Middle East. The service member was seriously wounded at the scene of an attack on U.S. troops in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on March the 1st. This is the 7th service member killed in action during Operation Epic Fury. Major combat operations continue. The U.S. military adds that the identity of the fallen warrior will be withheld until 24 hours after next of kin notification. Meanwhile, gasoline prices in the United States have risen 16% since the attacks on Iran began a week ago. In February, a gallon of regular gasoline cost an average of $2.89 across the United States. A week ago, that's one day into the war, the price had risen to $2.98. But today, gas has spiked to $3.45 a gallon, up 47 cents. And as long as the war continues, prices are predicted to keep rising.
What's going on?
Let's go back to Heidi Jo Castro,
Everybody
who
doing
is
all right?
in Washington. Heidi, so Americans are already feeling the cost of this war at home.
Everybody's still alive?
That's right,
What's
and
the
it's
word
a
in
cost
Kansas
that the
City?
Trump
Is that a terrorist
administration doesn't
attack?
want to,
Or is
bear
that just
blame
people being
for, with the
stupid?
U.S. Energy Secretary talking to U.S. media today, directly addressing that, trying to assure
Anybody
Americans.
know?
He said that this war was
Anybody
not
care?
long-term. He said this was a temporary movement. Those were the words of Chris
I'd like to know.
Wright, rather, and saying that gas
I can.
prices will not remain high for much longer, and that the oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz would start moving again soon. Whether or not Americans believe him is a wholly unanswered question, given just how unpopular this conflict is among the general American public, with polling showing that 56% oppose these U.S. military strikes against Iran, and very few, just 36%, approve of how Trump is handling Iran.
All right, Heidi Jo Castro, live in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Heidi. Well, Iran has named Moshtaba Khamenei, the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the new supreme leader. That's according to state media. Ali Hashem joins us live on set. So, Ali, Heidi brought up a good point there, that we have heard this name in the past week, and we've heard it out of the mouth of the American president, who said that he felt that this would be an incompetent choice, or a lightweight, as Heidi said. So what are we expecting to hear from the U.S. president if we do?
Well, Moshtaba Khamenei's name has been circulating for years. Within the Iranian, let me say, elite, there have been this discussion whether it works or it doesn't, because this was something on the table. But many thought it's not going to happen because of the hereditary issue, and succession within the same family could give resemblances to the monarchy. Yet, at this time, and the new circumstances, the killing of his father, it seems that all the circumstances were ready for Moshtaba Khamenei to ascend and to become Iran's new supreme leader. Now,
and as you say, we're probably significant enough to outweigh the concerns that people had before.
Absolutely. Now, with respect to the United States, I'm quite sure that this is not going to be the choice they want. It's not President Trump's choice, of course, and That's why we will be waiting to see how President Trump is going to react to this first. And second, how Mujtaba Khamenei is going to try to continue this war while he's alive.
Because, as we know, there will be preparations that have been underway, probably not just for him, but whoever was chosen. But do we have any idea what those could look like? Will we maybe not see him for a while, is what I'm saying?
I don't know. I mean, now, given the fact there is a leader and there is a leader that is announced, then we are going to hear from him.
Cannot do it.
How are we going to hear from him? This is another issue. But probably there's going to be a video message that he is going to give to the Iranian nation, just stating his own manifesto for the future, for now, for the war. What is he planning for this war? And actually, the main urge that many within the Iranian elite and the Iranian institutions were pushing for the election or the announcement of the election of a leader is to have a figurehead to lead this war. Because at the end, the presence of someone like Khamenei, now given the fact he's the new supreme leader, could give more trust and confidence in the state.
Right, and in the messaging that's coming from it. I want to bring Mohammed Val back in from Tehran as well, because Mohammed, we have obviously been watching for the election of a supreme leader. The U.S. and Israel certainly have, but I'm sure the people in Iran also have as well, because this is a very important figure, not just politically there. What have people been saying throughout the past week about perhaps how long this has taken, how it was taking place? What have you been hearing from people there?
Well, Riley, because of the blackout of the internet, that situation has caused a reduction in the amount of information that is flowing here and there among people. But also we know that, according to the things that we receive, the people what we talk to, the Iranians are bracing for this this announcement of a new supreme leader. But everyone here is Iran is expecting it to take time, and this announcement tonight may surprise many because they were not expecting this announcement to be soon because of the threats by the Israelis and the Americans to kill the new supreme leader. But at the same time, there has been discussion, there has been names talked about who is going to be probably
He's a target
elected
now.
and so on. As I mentioned in
What
my
are you gonna
previous
do?
intervention here, Hassan Rouhani's
should have
name
kept it
was
quiet.
presented
Not
as a
smart. Not
possibility. Speculation here about whether the leadership, the interim leadership, is going to take a hard line and appoint someone who is closer to the previous line or to the late supreme leader and to the Revolutionary Guard and to the Basij and so on, which is what happened, or whether whether they are going to select someone who is more reformist, closer to the reformists and so on, and probably more acceptable to the Americans and the Israelis. That has been the discussion during the last few days. But now that everything has become clear, the Iranians are going to, of course, remain divided about this announcement, because we have the reformists who have been demonstrating in the streets, looking for change in Iran. I don't think that situation will change. But under the present circumstances of war and aggression on Iran, we have seen their voice being hushed, not by the authorities, but by the feeling among many Iranians that now this is not the time to go and rally in the streets against the government. Many Iranians, as far as I know, and I'm told that many Iranians under circumstances like this, they even switch a little bit to the other side and feel nationalistic and feel that their country is under threat and that the enemy is at the gates of their country, and this is not the time they show some kind of attachment to liberalism or Western politics and so on. And that's the situation now. So people here, it is going to take time, and probably we will not hear much from the opposition right now until the war is over. But that's the time when the Iranians will come back probably to the same mode of
When the war is over.
because
That's
we want to
funny.
reform and so
That's
on.
real
But
funny.
this is not the right time for that.
Right, and Ali, I know there was some questions or some concern over the past week about maybe who was calling the shots inside Iran, given that there was no supreme leader. Does this bring that sort of stability to have one overarching figure?
Well, the fact is that despite there was no vacuum, given that the constitution allows this transitional leadership council to rule, but this figurehead will change the direction. At the end, he is going to be the leader. And whenever there is a leader, the situation is different from when there is a council. A leader has the power, have the legitimacy, have the depth within the state, is capable, especially now with a young leader. So we're talking about same time, he's well entrenched in the system, knows very well how things are going on. He knows what the IGC is doing, what the security services are doing, how the politics is working in the country. So he's not expected to take time to get used to the situation. He's already part of this situation because he was his father's gatekeeper and he knew all the details. Now, how is his approach going to be different from his father's approach? His father used to be a very cautious leader. Will the war make Mujtaba Khamenei come out with an aggressive approach? These are questions that we just heard about him now. We just heard about his policy, about his election, and now we are waiting to hear from him to know what his approach is going to be.
Right, and what he will say to the Iranian people. Well, the announcement was made as large crowds gathered across Iran on one of the most religious nights of the year. These are scenes from Abadan in southern Iran. Crowds chanted in support of Mojtaba Khamenei. They said they were ready to serve him and fight in the war. Crowds of pro-government supporters have been out on the streets across the country every night.
Trump is going to kill so many people.
In the Iranian
so many
capital
Americans
Tehran
killed.
for
It's
us.
not
So
even
we have
funny.
seen some pro-government rallies, but of course,
Not
as you
even
mentioned, a lot of
funny.
people who may be on the other side are not out in the streets at this moment for probably safety reasons.
Yeah.
What are we likely to see in the next few days as this all starts to become more clear?
Right, we have seen some movement in the streets, a few people in the streets pushing on the horns of their cars and showing some kind of excitement and approval of what happened. We know also that the Revolutionary Guard has sent an announcement or a kind of message to the people showing that they are in favor of this appointment or this election of the new leader. But as to your question, in the next few days, the expectation is that we will know more and more regarding all the components of the Iranian people about how they feel about this election of a new supreme leader. Most probably, the situation will not change. Iran will remain divided at the core between reformists and conservatives. But this is not the time for it to show really very clearly or strongly in the streets or in the media. We will hear more, I guess, from those who are pro this election by way of rallies, by way of statements, and so on. It's going to take time before it's really clear whether the new figure is really popular and has complete national consensus, because the situation of war is exceptional. Now, the sounds of bombs and so on and declarations of war and retaliation, and that's going to take precedence over discussion of politics the way we are used to witness here in Iran.
Mohammed Val, thank you. And Iran's parliament speaker has also welcomed the choice of Mojtaba Khamenei as the supreme leader, says that following him is a religious and national duty. So, Ali Hashim, what is your reaction to that? We're starting to see sort of more figureheads in Iran come out and have a reaction to this news.
The ideology of the Islamic Republic of Iran, based on the Wilayat al-Faqih, which is a religious doctrine, calls for abiding and listening to the leader, whoever the leader is. And now also we're hearing from Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. So all the Iranian officials now will be pledging allegiance to Ayatollah
But that's to be
Khamenei,
expected, I
the
would
new
imagine.
Khamenei.
Of course.
That's to be expected,
This is
I would
part of the
imagine.
system.
Yeah.
This is part of the system. Whoever they elect, they are going to follow him. They are going to abide by his orders. They are going to listen to him, because he has two, let me say, he has two mandates. He has the political mandate as leader of the Islamic Republic, and he has the religious mandate as the deputy imam. So this is something else. This is related to the Shia theology. So these two mandates that he is now having are the ones that he is going to lead the country with. And that's why we are going to hear from the Iranian officials, one after the other, the Supreme National Security Council Secretary, the Parliament Speaker, absolutely from the President Pezeshkian. He is going to also issue a statement, and all the other Iranian institutions will have also to keep an eye on the IRGC wording of statement. How will it be? And this will give us also an indication how much they are celebrating the election of Mujtaba Khamenei.
And so we've been talking a lot this week about how this system specifically was built to withstand what happened a week ago. And I assume this is what we're seeing now, is the pieces are just falling back into place.
Well, yes, this is the argument. Even if an Ayatollah is assassinated, the way this system was built in 1979, it was built upon a very complicated set of councils and institutions that will make it very resistant to collapse. Even with the killing of Khamenei or the death of Khomeini in 1989, nothing will change with respect to the way the system is standing and the way the system will continue. They will elect someone new, and even when there is a vacuum, there is a transitional council that can lead the country. So the collapse that was in mind, at least President Trump was kind of hinting towards this issue, can't happen by killing the leaders.
But this is all very interesting too, isn't it, Ali? Because this is really only the second time that we've seen this happen.
Yeah.
And the last time was quite some time ago. So, and certainly this is the first time that we've seen this happen in a wartime scenario. So when we say we're like seeing the system sort of working as it was designed, it hasn't been tested all that much, has it?
Well, it's been tested 2 times, and it's been tested also with other layers of the leadership. We've seen among the Iranian leaders, 2 presidents, one president that was killed, 2 presidents that were killed. One was killed in 1981 in an explosion. Another was killed in 2024, just a couple of years ago in a helicopter crash. The system continued. Also, a president was removed from his presidency, Hassan Bani Sadr in 1980 also. So they've gone through several experiences, and the most important experience, or let me say challenge or test, was the death of Khomeini. Most of the Western newspapers then, in the 80s, were predicting that the moment Khomeini is going to die, this system will collapse. And Khomeini died. The second day, there was a new leader. Now, in the middle of a war, Khamenei is killed in around 10 days, probably, or 8 days after his killing. There's a new leader elected. Now, how much this system is going to be able to continue, how much it's resilient under pressure, because the war is still at its beginning. No one knows when this war is going to end, and how much layers within the system
it's going to be years before it ends. Years.
Remove. How much this system is able to bring together itself, how much it's going to be united and resilient, time will tell.
I want to go back to Mohammed Val in Tehran for us, Mohammed, because you mentioned that there were some issues with communications that were happening in Iran, but I imagine this news is going to be spreading very fast. How are people going to be getting it?
You break up. I can't hear your question, but if you
Let me try
wanted
again
to
for you, Mohammed. I'll try again for
continue.
you if you can
Yes.
still hear me. Can you hear me now? Great.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier
Yes,
that the
yes.
communications in Tehran and in Iran were not working very well. But I imagine that this news is spreading quite quickly around the country. I'm wondering how people are getting this news.
Well, I'm sure that it will be. It's now on national TV. There is no doubt about it. National TV is still working, so that's probably the most efficient means of communication between the government and the public right now. Internet-wise, yes, there will be problem. People talking to each other and probably creating a kind of common opinion about talking about the different groups with different political affiliations. But as I said before, it's well known how people feel and react to this, and going to react to this appointment or to this election. The most important thing right now at this particular moment is the important groups that are playing a role in the defense and so on, like the Revolutionary Guard, and I will read to you a little bit of what they have said here. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps will, while supporting the election of the Assembly of Experts, is fully prepared to obey the divine commands of the current Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei, and to uphold the values of the Islamic Revolution, as well as to protect the invaluable legacy of the leaders of the revolution, Imam Khomeini and Imam Khamenei. These are the groups that matter at the moment, because these are the groups that have the weapons and they have the ability to influence the situation. And the priority for the people of Iran now, and I understand it includes everyone here in Iran, is this for the sovereignty of the country and for the internal integrity, the national integrity of Iran to be preserved. So these are the groups that matter now, and their support is very crucial. If, for instance, it is different, if the Revolutionary Guard has stated its position otherwise, that is going to be very problematic for Iranians, for the country of Iran right now. But that's not the case. So we are seeing the most important groups that compose, of which the political structure is composed, those who have arms, those who have influence and so on, rallying behind this election, and that's what matters right now for Iran.
And Ali, you mentioned that what the Revolutionary Guard said in their statement, the way they worded it, would be very important. What's your reaction to what Mohammed was saying?
Well, it's clear that the Revolutionary Guard, and this is expected because Mujtaba Khamenei is very close to the guards, and they are very close to him. He built his relationship with the guards since the Iran-Iraq war. He was a member of the Habib bin Mazahir battalion that fought in the Iran-Iraq war, and many of the leading commanders of the IRGC were his peers. So he was fighting alongside with them, and that's why this relation between him and the bond between him, it's a bond of wartime. That's why
at least he's actually fought in war, unlike Trump, draft dodging fat
This project
fuck.
sees this man and the guards together,
Insane.
and the wording of the statement shows that they are supporting him completely.
I can't believe Trump has caused all this chaos
just to
on
people to support him,
create a distraction
they see
from
him
the
as the
Epstein
new leader
files.
who is going to take Iran towards
Absolutely
a new
pathetic.
horizon.
And he'll be feeling, I imagine, an immense amount of pressure, not only because of taking on the role of Supreme Leader, but doing it under the circumstances that are happening now.
Absolutely. It's a different system, different time, different everything.
And will have a huge impact on what happens in Iran, not just in the short term, but in the long term.
You know, a transition in normal times could be easy, but transition in wartime is very difficult because he'll have to take decisions with respect to how the war is going to be. He'll have to talk to people, and he'll have also to face the challenges on his life and his security. So it's a multi-layered challenges and intertwined situation where he is not actually sure whether he is going to reach till the end of this war or not, because the Israelis, the Americans are after him, they want to kill him, and he'll have to see how to manage this period.
All right, well, we have had Mohammed Val in the Iranian capital in Tehran for us. Ali Hashim, you have reported extensively from Iran, and we certainly appreciate your insight and analysis on this breaking news for us tonight. Thank you very much. You are watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. I'm Riley Carlson, and here are the latest developments. Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei to replace his father, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. There have been more explosions across Tehran, hours after Israeli and U.S. attacks on oil facilities caused toxic smoke across the Iranian capital. A 7th U.S. soldier is confirmed killed a day after President Trump paid tributes at a ceremony honoring soldiers who died in the conflict. And the Lebanese government says more than 500,000 people have been forcibly displaced as Israel continues to strike more southern towns. It's 22 GMT, and we have the latest developments in the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran that has spread to large parts of the Middle East and is now threatening global fuel supplies. We have correspondents in Amman, here in Doha, in Washington, D.C., and in Tehran. But first, Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei to replace the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader. The supreme leader is Iran's highest political and religious authority. So who is Mojtaba Khamenei? He is Ali Khamenei's second eldest son. The 56-year-old has been a powerful, behind-the-scenes figure in Iran, and while he has not held any formal position, he wields immense influence. He was a top aide to his father and is seen as a key gatekeeper to his office. He is said to have strong ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. He served in the IRGC Habib Battalion in the 8-year war against Iraq. Now, the announcement was made as large crowds gathered across Iran on one of the most important religious nights of the year. This was the scene in Abadan in southern Iran. Crowds chanted in support of Mojtaba Khamenei. They said they were ready to serve him and to fight in the war. Crowds of pro-government supporters have been out on the streets across the country every night. Our correspondent Ali Hashim joins us live on set. So it was a big religious night in Iran, which I don't know if that played into the announcement or the timing of the announcement, but also some of his supporters. Is there probably concern from the United States and Israel that this announcement would mobilize people behind a new supreme leader instead of the opposite, which is what they're hoping for with this military action?
Well, indeed, it was a religious night, and it's the Laylatul Qadr in the Islamic Shia sect. It's also the anniversary of the killing of Ali bin Abi Talib, who is the second most valued character in Shia Islam. So putting all these together give a kind of a symbolism to the choice. And they are trying to, the deep state, the system in Iran is trying to stress the symbolism of the choice of Mojtaba Khamenei as a son of the slain leader, the martyr, also the father of a daughter who was killed, the son and the husband. So all this trying to put it as part of Mojtaba Khamenei's legitimacy the moment he is ascending to power, not just a situation where he is just succeeding his father. Rather, he is taking this because he deserves it. So this is how they are portraying it and picturing it. Now, the fact is that at this moment, in the middle of the war, a new leader is being elected. This is a position of defiance from the Islamic Republic towards the United States. Given the fact President Trump said and repeated he's not going to accept but having a voice and a vote in this, it seems that he didn't. Now, the other side of the story is that the United States and Israel threatened to kill him.
Right, and they actually said that the next supreme leader, whoever that would be, would have a target on their back. Now that we know who it is, do we know what kind of security precautions the council will have taken or that the new supreme leader will be taking? Because that will be a big concern as this goes forward.
Well, given how he was elected, it seems that they've been taking a lot of precautions because the council, the Assembly of Experts, have never, they didn't meet. And the way they elected him was a very complicated operation. Now, we don't know what are the details, but they never met. And we heard of an Israeli, actually the Israelis spoke about them attempting on the Assembly of Experts while meeting in Qom and killing them all. Later on, we knew that didn't happen because the meeting was not physical. Now, the election of Khamenei will mean he will be under a lot of security precautions and measures. How this is going to happen, no one knows. We have not seen him for a long time. Actually, he is one of those
guy's going to have a target on his back forever.
We only
literally forever.
Right.
We saw few pictures of Mojtaba Khamenei. Maybe the only video I saw for him was a couple of years ago when he was announcing an online lesson.
He's got a good hiding
because
spot.
He's
gonna
a
need
clerical
one.
teacher. He teaches in the seminary. So he was announcing that he's stopping his studies. So that's the only time I saw him speaking. Now it's going to be the first time we hear from him.
Right, and we'll go to Mohammed Val now, who is live for us in Tehran, because that is what people in Tehran are looking for. And Mohammed, I'm also wondering, because we're starting to hear reaction from at least parts of the institution in Iran. Can you bring us up to speed with what we're hearing?
Yeah, that's right. The first institution, and probably one of the most important, is the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard. They have issued a statement about it, saying that they are behind this election and they are going to fight and go in the footsteps and in the path that has been set for Iran by the late Supreme Leader, and also by the Supreme Leader who ruled the country before him, Imam Khomeini. So that's very reassuring for Iran here, that for the Iranians who are on this side of the political spectrum, that the institutions that matter, that have the weapons, that have the numbers and so on, and the political clout in the country, have already talked about supporting this election. Also, other institutions are mentioned in the social media and so on. We have to reconfirm that, but it's very clearly that most of all Iran that has been behind the late Supreme Leader is going to stand apparently behind the new Supreme Leader. Also, those gatherings tonight, and it is very interesting, by the way, this coincidence between what they call the Night of Destiny and the drawing of the new phase of Iran's destiny. The Night of Destiny, the 19th of Ramadan for the Shia, is the first of 3 nights of destiny, and this is the night they chose around midnight to announce a decision that is going to shape the destiny of Iran, at least for the next few days, weeks, or months, or years. We don't know about that, because we know that this new Supreme Leader has been threatened by the Israelis and the Americans to kill him. So we don't know how much he will survive, how long he will survive, I mean. But it is very interesting that there is a show of support.
I'm sure there's a
across
prediction
the country
market for that somewhere.
by those who
right?
matter, by
How
those
long
who
will
have
this guy survive?
the clout and the politics
There's
and the
gotta be.
weapons and so on behind him. And that's a good message for the Iranians at this particular moment, because the crucial thing for Iran now, the requirement, is unity, national unity, and that's something that is going to help them probably move forward in this war and protect the country.
Okay, Mohammed, and I also wonder, as you are starting to hear things from people who are in Iran, are we starting to get reaction from people who are not part of the institution, just everyday people in Iran?
I think it's going to take time, because it's way after midnight.
For people voting yes in the poll for boots on the ground in Iran, hop into the chat and give me your reasons why. I'm interested to know.
Really knowing what everybody thinks about it, we are beginning to hear the voices of those who support this election in the streets of Tehran, and we have even already heard some of that, and also those gatherings, those religious gatherings for the Night of Destiny, expression of support for this. But it is going to take probably time, maybe 24 hours, maybe early tomorrow we will hear more from people who might be against it. But as I said before, this is not the time in Iran to show opposition to what's going on. Not because people are afraid to be arrested and so on, but it is a time when Iranians feel that it's not appropriate for them now to oppose the authority that is leading this war when the enemy is at the gates of the country.
Okay, Mohammed Val for us in Tehran. Thank you very much. I want to bring in our guest now. Barbara Salvin is a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center, and she is joining us from Washington, D.C. Barbara, thank you very much for joining us for this breaking news. I just first off want to get your impressions of the selection of Mojtaba Khamenei for the new Supreme Leader of Iran.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And it's Slavin, by the way, Barbara Slavin.
My apologies. Thank you very much.
That's okay. It's a crazy day. It's a real finger in the eye to Donald Trump, who explicitly said he didn't want Mujtaba Khamenei. It makes the whole U.S. project, the whole U.S.-Israeli war, even more senseless. To kill Ayatollah Khamenei and then simply get his son in his place, somebody who's going to be furious, of course, at the murder of his father, his mother, his wife, and one of his children in the Israeli strike, just a week ago.
Surely the United States and Israel, though, must have anticipated that this could have been what would happen. That had to have factored into the plans.
I don't know if they did, although here I'm reading something I wrote in 2019 with a colleague, Abbas Kadim, when I was at the Atlantic Council, where we talked about who might succeed Khamenei, and here we had Mujtaba. We said that obviously it was controversial because it would look too much like a monarchy and hereditary succession, but Mujtaba has the necessary connections with the IRGC and the paramilitary Basij, as well as insight into his father's vast financial resources. So probably, Mujtaba has essentially been ruling with his father, who was 86, for a long time. And given the existential threat that the Islamic Republic faces, it seems quite logical that they would put Mujtaba there because he knows everyone and everything, and will not need to have a learning curve in order to fulfill this job. Of course, he will be controversial because he is associated with repression. In fact, we noted back in 2019 that he was rumored to have played a major role in orchestrating the fraudulent re-election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad for president in 2009 during the Green Movement. He will not be a popular choice. He is not by any means someone who seems likely to bring more human rights and democracy to Iran. That said, he's 56. So he will be different from his father, assuming he survives, and that he now has a target on his back. I think the Israelis have made that very clear. But he is a younger generation and therefore will bring something different to the role.
Barbara, I wonder how you feel that this news will be received in America by Americans, if they will see it as you do, as sort of, we've been doing this for a week now and we've got pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to increase the sense in the United States that this war was a mistake, a tremendous mistake. We now have, 7 dead Americans, over 1,000 others killed, mostly in Iran, but also some in Israel and in the GCC states. Enormous economic dislocation, the price of oil skyrocketing, massive destruction of infrastructure. For what? To get Mujtaba Khamenei as Iran's supreme leader. Okay.
All right, no Barbara Slavin, thank you very much for your time and your insight and for joining us here on Al Jazeera. Let's bring in Ali Hashim again, who joins me now on the desk. Ali, I wonder your reaction to what Barbara was saying, that how the optics of this may play in the United States as the administration is continuing to try to hone its message to Americans and try to garner support for this military conflict, how this might play.
Well, this is a two-sided game. It's not one-sided. It's not just President Trump who runs the show. So there's another side, and the other side is the Iranians. And they seem to be defiant, and they seem to be insisting on not surrendering. And this is what President Trump wants. He wants them to surrender. So the only thing that they are showing is that they're not surrendering. So the fact that these are all issues that will really provoke President Trump to heighten his own pressure on the Iranian government. We are going to see a new phase in this war. Probably from tomorrow on, we will see more attacks, and they will be looking for Khamenei to kill him, the new Khamenei. Now, they killed a Khamenei in his 86. Now they have another copy of Khamenei in his 56, 30 years younger.
Right. And I wonder how you think this is going to, what the reaction is going to be from Iran's neighbors in the Gulf. about this? Because if he does take the helm as supreme leader and he does, as you say, take a defiant stance, take a hardline stance, especially when it comes to the military conflict we're seeing, surely the Gulf neighbors will also have some concern about that.
Well, absolutely. The Gulf neighbors already have concerns. What's been happening now, regardless of them not announcing that they are in a situation of war with Iran, but it's a de facto war situation, whereas they are being hit by Iranian drones and missiles on daily basis. The Iranians say that they are launching rockets and drones towards American interests, but these rockets and drones are hitting the lands of these countries. So they're already in a situation of hostility with Iran. The way they are going to receive Mujtaba's election or selection, I think it's going to be with a lot of concern on one side, and at the same time they'll be watching. Maybe he'll come with something new. Maybe he will surprise them, opening towards the region. But it's not the right time because this is war.
These are all things we will have to wait and see. All right, let's bring in Heidi Jo Castro now, who is live for us in Washington, D.C. And Heidi, we were talking there with our guest about how the Trump administration might be reacting to this. Do we have any idea how that may go?
It's interesting that President Trump has not put out a statement yet directly
He's
in
golfing.
Response to the
He can't
announcement
be
of Mujtaba
bothered.
Khamenei
Leave him alone,
as the
or he's
Iranian's
taking a nap.
new supreme leader. But we do know just earlier, about a
2
few
o'clock
hours
in the
ago,
morning,
he did
he'll give you
tell
a response.
ABC News that whoever this new leader is, if it's selected without Trump's own approval, that this person would not last for long. But of course, Mujtaba Khamenei has been at the top of the list for potential successors to the supreme leader's position. And Trump last week told Axios that he did not consider Mujtaba Khamenei as someone who was competent. He called him a lightweight and said that his selection would be unacceptable. a lot of words in a way to try to threaten his way into getting the leadership that he wanted in Iran. But as many critics and analysts had pointed out, without any U.S. boots on the ground in Iran, there was almost zero influence that the U.S. president would be able to have over who becomes this new leader. So now we're still waiting for a response directly from the president. We're also waiting for other members of his administration. It seems that people are all waiting for Trump to weigh in first. And just as our guest said earlier, the fact that now to have had 7 U.S. service members killed in this war that's lasted only a little over a week, and for the outcome of this, which Trump initially said would be regime change, in which he asked the Iranian people to rise up and seize the moment, he said, for that moment to now result in the son of the former supreme leader who was assassinated to now take over, this is not the scenario that the Trump administration had wanted.
All right, Heidi Jo Castro in Washington. Let's bring Mohammed Val back in, who's in the Iranian capital for us. So, Mohammed, we understand that all of this is happening not just because the supreme leader is being announced, and as Ali Hashim has been telling us, he's coming in obviously as the supreme leader of the entire institution and will now be the commander of what Iran does in this war. But I also wonder, Ali, if you could tell us, or sorry, Mohammed, if you could tell us a bit about what is happening in Iran tonight and what the background of all of this is in Iran.
Yeah, really what's happening now is more messages of support to the for the election of the new supreme leader. We have heard already from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and now we have heard just a while ago from the armed forces. And that means the armed forces with its several components, including the Basij. Those are the paramilitary, hundreds of thousands of people. The armed forces has announced its support to the election of Mujtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader of the country. That's very crucial. We have also the Supreme National Security Council led by Ali Larijani. Ali Larijani on the phone talked to the media here, the Iranian national media, about his support and the support of his council for this appointment. So again, this is what matters for Iranians tonight, for the revolutionary structures to be back on track just as intact as they were before the
course they
beginning
all
of this
support him.
war
Do
and
they
the
have a choice?
assassination
I
of
mean,
the
it's a
late Supreme Leader.
dictatorship.
I am sure that this is
You
a
know,
very
either
negative
support the guy
message
or you
for
get
the
unalived.
Americans and the Israelis.
It's not hard to figure out.
Something they didn't want maybe to hear because they were betting, according to Iranians here, Americans and Israelis were betting on the disintegration of Iran politically, of the revolutionary structures, immediately because of the assassination of the late Supreme Leader. So that's not what's happening. Iranians are putting their act together again and announcing a Supreme Leader. And remember, the Supreme Leader is the guarantor of national unity. He's the head of the armed forces. He's the head of the political structures and so on. And he's the man who can make people who are divergent in views, who can talk to each of them and they listen to him, because that's the Shia ideology. One man is the central figure in the country and everybody is listening to him. He has the religious, the spiritual authority, and also the political clout, the political prerogative as per the constitution to unite the country. And this is what Iranians have been waiting for, regardless of what the opposition is thinking about. As I told you before, the Iranians in the opposition side, they are not expected to be loud right now and to talk about this. Maybe they will not show support, but they will not go into the streets to oppose this, because this is not the time for it. Iran is under bombardment and attacks and so on. Everybody is concerned for their security, and also there is that feeling that among Iranians, but that this is the time of a feeling of nationalism, that the enemy is on the gates and the country is under the risk of being invaded, dissected, divided, probably civil war and so on. So this is a very dangerous moment here in Iran, and you can hear right now, expected to hear only the voices of those who support this election.
And Mohammed, you know, we already know, and we've talked about the fact that Israel and the United States have said that whoever is the new Supreme Leader will be in their crosshairs, and they do plan on another assassination. I wonder, will people in Iran be waiting to hear from the American president? Will they also find it interesting that there has not been a comment made yet?
Well, Iranians might be waiting for any announcement for the Americans and Israelis, but they are expecting, they already know what the Americans and Israelis are going to say, because they have already said it. But I don't think the Iranians, or at least when I talk to Iranians, they're not much concerned about what the Americans are saying. And that's why the Iranians have taken their own decision to elect a leader who is not pleasing to the Americans and the Israelis. It's, as we said, it's an act of defiance. The Iranians are sending a message to the world that this is a sovereign nation that chooses its own leaders according to its own constitution and not according to diktats coming from others, even if the others are powerful nations, empires that are ruling the world and so on. Iran is just in the same manner they are defying militarily and striking back against the most powerful superpower in the world, are also politically making the same thing and taking decisions that please them, not please their enemy.
Let's go to Rory Chalids now, who joins us live from Amman. And Rory, I wonder, we already know that Israel was planning on, as they say, assassinating or taking out the successor of the Supreme Leader. Have we heard anything from them so far now that the successor has been named?
Well, of course, this news is going to be being analysed right now in Israel very closely indeed. I think what we're going to get is basically two linked but slightly separate approaches. The first is what Israel is going to be saying in public, and that is essentially that this doesn't really change anything at all. That the new leader of Iran is going to be a target just like the old leader of Iran was, and that he is going to be hunted. They are going to be looking for any opportunity that they can get to strike. They'll be analysing their comms, their information, their SIGINTs, all of these things that allow them to go after the previous supreme leader, Khamenei's father. They're going to be doing exactly the same for this new guy, and I think they're going to be pretty candid about that. They've telegraphed that already. essentially for the Israelis, they have a position that it doesn't matter about the personality, it doesn't matter about the man at the top, it's the system that they feel is an enemy of Israel, and that they will continue their policies against Iran as long as the Iranian leadership continues its policies against Israel. But beyond that, I think they'll be interested about who this new guy is and what his appointment as the supreme leader says about the status, about the stability of the regime. They'll be interested that he is the son of the former supreme leader, and that they'll be asking questions at the moment. What does this say? Does this mean that this is now moving into a dynasty? Does that suggest that the Islamic Revolution is betraying its kind of original tenets, that this was not a system that handed power from father to son? And if it is becoming that, does that mean that the system is decaying? Of course, since this war started last week, the Iranian system, the Iranian regime is now in full-on survival mode. It is fighting with every sinew for its durability. And if it is now moving into a dynastic situation, is that a suggestion that the cracks are starting to widen within the regime? That is the kind of thing that the Israelis are going to be looking at now. Of course, we don't have answers to those questions at the moment. The Israelis don't have answers to those questions at the moment, but they're certainly going to be asking them.
All right, Rory Challen's live for us in Amman. Rory, thank you very much. Now let's bring in Abbas Eslani, who is a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. He is joining us from Tehran. Abbas, thank you very much for joining us. I wonder, first of all, what your reaction is to the appointment of the new supreme leader.
Well, this election is coming at a time of a conflict with the United States and Israel, and this makes it a bit more meaningful. And this somehow signals the continuity here in Iran, because many are interpreting his election as the continuation of the previous approach that Iran has had under his father, and they may call it as a rejuvenated version of his father. And this indicates that if you place
younger,
it into
faster,
context,
smarter, more nimble,
this somehow shows that the country is
more
somehow
extreme.
Prioritizing the security
Feel
and
bad
the
for the Iranian
survival
people.
At this specific time, because the country needs to navigate through
None of this ends well.
this challenging time that it is facing. There was a vacuum created as a result of the loss of the leader, meaning his father, that needed to be filled. But also he has not had a, let's say, official role in the government. This might be the question for many, but he was somehow involved previously in the developments that happened in the country, and maybe previously if it was in the shadow, he is coming to the light and assuming the new role as the leader.
And Abbas, some of our guests have mentioned, and Rory was just talking about it just a moment ago before you joined us, that there was some concern that he may be the appointment for the next supreme leader because of the hereditary link with Ali Khamenei. And I wonder what your reaction to that is, and what you think the reaction of the Iranian people will be to that.
Well, normally, election of a leader didn't used to be part of a hereditary, let's say, system. But according, I think, to the context, maybe the system is moving toward a dynamic one, a new type of, let's say, succession. And
well,
we are at
let's
a
not get
time
carried
that,
away.
electing a new leader could be somehow very difficult.
You guys aren't much of a match for the U.S. military. Having said that, there's no stomach in America to put troops on the ground here. So
risking the situation.
You guys are going to win by default.
Of an ongoing conflict was difficult. Many were, asking for an election of a new leader who could be
It's a good thing you
somehow
don't fear death, because
functioning
Trump's going to
in a manner that can
bomb the
navigate
crap
the
out of all of
country
you.
through
And when
this
we run out of
challenging
smart
time.
bombs that only
Maybe
bomb
that's
school
why, as I
children,
said
we're
earlier,
going to
the
use
country
dumb bombs and
indicates
just
that
carpet bomb everything and kill
wants to
hundreds of
prioritize the
thousands of people
survival
in
and
the Middle East,
security to
all
maybe,
as a
let's say, a
distraction
political,
from the fact that Trump's a
let's say,
pedophile.
reform.
It's
And
insane. Just know that the
somebody who
American
was
people, by and
well
large, are
familiar
completely
with,
against putting
let's say,
boots on the ground
issues
here,
or connected
for
to
the
other
most part.
institutions, was the son of the late leader. So this is taking place, and I think this might raise some questions, but I think what we see in action, his approach, his policies, how he will lead the country in the longer term, this will be more important, and I think the public will pay more attention to this.
Ali, I want to pick up on that too, because we don't know exactly what that will be. We don't know what his policies will be. We don't know any of that because he has not been a prominent political figure or held a point in government, as Abbas alluded to and you alluded to before. He's been sort of a shadowy figure in the past. So I wonder if you could please, for our viewers, bring us up to speed on what we do know so far about Moshtaba Khamenei.
Well, what we know is he was so close to his father. He has this tendency, such as his father, with respect to the revolutionary vision. His position towards the United States is very hostile. His position towards Israel is the same. And now in the middle of the war, and I was telling you, he's not just a new supreme leader. He's a supreme leader coming after his father, his mother, his wife, and his child were all killed together. So he is an avenger in a way or another. He's coming to avenge for the blood, and also at the time to lead the country at a time of war. So it's not really expected to see, except someone who is confronting. So he's a confronting leader and not a moderate leader, not a leader coming to open windows for diplomacy, at least for the moment. Yet, if this war comes to an end and Moshtaba Khamenei is still alive, and there is a window for, let me say, a settlement, Moshtaba Khamenei is well positioned to be able to take big decisions then and to bring Iran down the ladder in a way or another. In a way, no one will come and say that this is a traitor or this is giving up on our rights and dignity, because he was in the middle of this. He already have the baggage on his back, and he will be able to call the shots easily because he is in the right position for that.
Symbolically, it's a very big choice. Abbas, I wonder to you, for people who were wondering if an appointment of a new supreme leader would provide a diplomatic off-ramp here, or even just maybe not even a full off-ramp, but just a way to crack open the door a little bit, is this the man to do it in your estimation?
I think for the country, that was a very significant issue to have somebody in this role who was well aware of the security, political, and lots of the aspects that is related to a leadership role. And from this perspective, he is the most well-suited person to assume the job. And this seems to be somehow, as Ali said earlier, is somehow continuity, and he is supposed to be the younger version of his father. And many who have been even critical of the current system or the economic hardship that exists in the country thought that the late leader was the one who could unite and function as a focal point for different factions to unite. So this unity within this context, within against the backdrop of ongoing conflict, is very important. So from this perspective, I think as he is the continuation of his father, it could be very important. And the others, compared to Moshtaba Khamenei, maybe they didn't enjoy that much position. As I said earlier, he was in the shadow, meaning that he was involved in many those issues in the past. So he knows how the situation exactly is, so he could be a better person to decide when it comes to very important issues like security related to war, or and make decisions to challenge this difficult time.
But Abbas, I also want to ask you about the security concerns that he will and the council will have for himself as this goes on, because we know that Israel and the U.S. have said that whoever is elected as the new supreme leader will be a target. What sort of action will be taken to try to mitigate that risk against the new supreme leader, do you know?
Well, this is not a surprise that the U.S. and Israel were willing to assassinate the new leader as well. They have made that threat public. But I think in terms of security protocols, there will be some measures in order to make sure that he will be in a safe and secure place. But this danger existed, but I think leaving that vacuum in place would be more dangerous for the country at a time of this aggression against Iran, because the country needed that leader in order to unite different factions and maybe to stop the internal and domestic competition between different factions to elect a new leader. They now need to be focused on an external enemy. And so leading through this difficult time needed somebody who could make important decisions, who could have, influential role in, let's say, setting the future direction in terms of the ongoing war or many issues in bigger picture. So that's why, despite the threat of assassination, it was more important for the country to have the new leader in place. And so the danger of not having a new leader could even be more than assassination danger.
And Ali, to you, this may be also of concern to the United States and Israel, not just because Donald Trump had mentioned that he wanted to have a hand in choosing the next supreme leader, and he didn't seem very excited about the prospect of Mojtaba Khamenei, but also because part of the goal of this military campaign was to sort of dismantle this regime enough to give rise to a portion of the Iranian people who wanted to take over their government. So symbolically, seeing this sort of function the way it was actually intended must not be what they were hoping for in this moment.
Well, there is a misunderstanding when it comes to how President Trump is seeing Iran. Iran is a 3,000 years old country. It's not a banana state. It's a country with a system, and this system is deep and entrenched, and it's a revolutionary system that's already been raising the slogan "Death to America" for years. So I don't know how President Trump was expecting that this same revolutionary system is going to surrender and accept that he can have a say in the choice of its own leader. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions, and maybe sometimes a lot of it's a superficial, let me say,
Iran is not a peaceful
analysis of the
country.
situation.
Come on. You sponsor terrorism all over the Middle East, all over the world.
And it's always been in the situation
you
of
pay Hamas and
challenging
Hezbollah.
the United States.
Come on.
It's been
You're not a direct threat to
one
the
of the
United
main,
States as of right
let me
now.
say, objectives of
But
the Islamic
let's not get
Republic
carried
in
away
this
and call
region
yourself
was
a peaceful
to
country.
make the United
That's
States
insane.
life in
Do you
this
deserve all
region
this crap
very
that's
bad.
happening to you right
So
now?
how
Probably
is he
not.
expecting that they are going to surrender in
Don't get
order for
stupid.
him to win this war? I think that was the main issue and the main problem in the way he saw the picture. Now, the possibility of him killing Mujtaba just as he killed Ali Khamenei and killing even the one who might come after Mujtaba, this is something else. It's related to how the military and security dynamics are. But I don't see that the Iranians are going to surrender this way.
Abbas Aslani in Tehran and Ali Hashem here with me in Doha. Thank you both very much for your analysis on this. You are watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei to replace his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. The government has called on the Iranian people to be united and pledge allegiance to the new supreme leader. Ali Khamenei was killed in a U.S.-Israeli airstrike just over a week ago. Israel bombed 4 oil storage and distribution facilities on Saturday. The sites are spread out across Tehran and in the northern region of El Borj. Strikes on the Egdase oil warehouse sparked a huge fire, sending a thick column of smoke above northeastern areas of the capital. Then to the south of Tehran, a refinery there came under fire in the Sahrayeh area. One of Iran's largest fuel storage hubs was also hit in the Sharon district. That facility holds about 260 million liters of refined products for local distribution. It was also previously targeted by Israeli airstrikes in June. And in the city of Karaj, an oil product transfer center also went up in flames. Combined, those attacks will leave nearly 10 million people in the Tehran area exposed to toxic air and rain. Al Jazeera's Tawhid Asadi is close to one of those oil depots in Tehran that was hit by an airstrike.
Here we are in the western areas of Tehran, in Shahran neighborhood, where one of the depots targeted by a campaign of American and Israeli strikes can be seen behind me. And as you can see, thick smoke is drifting through the air. And of course, this is one of the oil facilities of the country that has been targeted. Several fuel depots in southeast and western parts, as well as eastern parts of the capital, were hit, sending flames and heavy toxic smoke high into the sky. That smoke has now spread across almost the entire capital, and from different points, specifically from the skylines, Tehran can be barely visible through the dense blanket of pollution. And for people here, this is yet another crisis piled on top of many others. Over the past days, the city has already come under repeated airstrikes, with attacks not only targeting military headquarters, police stations, and the state buildings, but also severely impacting many residential areas. Now, on top of these strikes themselves, residents are dealing with a growing public health concern. The toxic smoke from the burning fuel depots
It's an
has
environmental nightmare.
engulfed the capital and is drifting
Some things
towards
never
neighboring
change, man.
cities,
There's one thing the United
raising
States
serious
loves, it's wars
and
in the Middle
concerns
East.
about air quality. Iran's Environment Department has asked citizens to avoid outdoor activities as much as possible, and the Red Crescent warns that chemicals released from the fires have contaminated rainfall, advising people not to expose themselves to the rain. The consequences of these strikes are unfolding in real time, and there are so many concerns, not just about the infrastructure's damage, but also about the human cost that millions of people living in this city have to be dealing with. Tawhid Asadi, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
The U.S. Military Central Command has announced that a seventh soldier has died in the Middle East. Heidi Jo Castro is in Washington for us live with this. So, Heidi, tell us what more we know about this seventh soldier that was killed.
Right, according to U.S. Central Command, this service member was among those wounded on last Sunday in Saudi Arabia. They were stationed there and a victim of the Iranian drone strike on U.S. troops in Saudi, and he passed away, they said yesterday. Actually, we're not sure of this person's gender. In fact, there's no identifying information released pending the notification of the next of kin. But what is notable is that this is indeed the seventh U.S. service member who has lost their lives in this conflict that the U.S. and Israel launched against Iran. And it was just yesterday that the remains of the first 6 U.S. service members who were killed in Kuwait arrived back on U.S. soil. We saw the U.S. president receiving those remains and also issuing a warning that there would be more U.S. service members likely killed as this conflict with Iran continues. There's still no timeline as far as how long this will continue, with the U.S. issuing a warning to Iranian civilians early in the day, telling them that to stay home as more strikes on population centers are imminent.
And Heidi, this will be the most poignant and difficult way that Americans are feeling what's happening right now in Iran. But on an economic note, gasoline prices in the United States have risen 16% since the attacks on Iran began a week ago. In February, a gallon of regular gasoline cost an average of $2.89 across the United States. A week ago, that's one day into the war, that price had risen to $2.98. But today, gas has spiked to $3.45 a gallon. That's up 47 cents. And as long as the war continues, prices are predicted to keep rising. So, Heidi, are we getting any reaction from Americans or indeed from lawmakers, politicians, about these rising gas prices? It certainly goes against what the president had pledged to do, which was lower gas prices and make things more affordable.
That's right. And he sent his energy secretary on the U.S. talk shows this Sunday morning, in which he said that these prices would not stay high for long. He said that this would be a temporary movement, not a prolonged war, and that the oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz would begin moving soon. But the oil prices are just going the opposite direction. In fact, just the headline now, surging over $100 a barrel. So this is not the direction that the U.S. wants, that the Trump administration wants, and it certainly is a constant reminder for Americans when they see those gas prices on roads and highways that this war, in fact, does have an impact directly at home. And then, of course, even more poignantly when they see the caskets of the U.S. soldiers who have died as a result of this conflict coming home, and they're seeing more of them now. Now the 7th U.S. service member killed. That is the image that really makes this conflict so unpopular among Americans. In fact, 56% say in national polling that they oppose the U.S. strikes against Iran.
Heidi Jo Castro, live for us in Washington, D.C. Heidi, thank you. An Iranian military official says Tehran will intensify its offensive against Israel and the U.S. from Sunday night. The warning came as sirens sounded across central Israel and Tel Aviv after the Israeli military detected missiles launched from Iran. Medics say 3 people were injured in central Israel, only one of them seriously, after debris from an intercepted missile fell to the ground.
It's being reported right now by the AP that oil is topped over $100 a barrel. So, good job, Trump. Keep that money rolling in for me, buddy. Gotta love it.
Well, it was the 6th missile salvo of Sunday that caused the most damage. As you were saying there, the damage was spread across several parts of central Israel. In Tel Aviv, a man in his 40s was severely injured, and in nearby Petah Tikva, there were more injuries as well, one moderate injury and a few more slight injuries. But there were 12 or more damage sites across a wider area. And the police say that that spread of damage indicates that this was probably a cluster munition, a warhead that came from Iran that had cluster munitions in it that spread out over a pretty wide area. But remember, Israel at the moment is under pretty strict military media censorship. So there is a lot that isn't known. They don't want people talking about damaged sites. They don't want people talking about how many missiles have been intercepted. They don't want the broadcast media to be showing any missile interceptions in the sky. They want to know how people are reporting, from where and what they're saying. But what we can tell from this, I think, is that even though the Israelis and the Americans have been talking about smashing Iran's missile capabilities, its means of production, its means of launch, there are still missiles getting through, and that's despite Israel being highly protected. So there are warships, American warships off the coast of Israel who are shooting down Iranian missiles. You have countries that are underneath the flight path of those missiles, like Jordan, where I'm currently. They are shooting down Iranian missiles as well. And then you have Israel's own very, very sophisticated, competent, layered missile defense system that is also shooting missiles down, but still missiles are getting through. Having said that, though, I think that considering the scale of this war, considering the number of missiles that are being launched at Israel, Israel is probably considering at the moment that certainly on the home front, this situation is more or less manageable.
And Rory, of course, as we know, there is also this other military conflict happening right now in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. And I wonder if you can give us an update on how that's impacting northern Israel in terms of the evacuations of people and impact that it's having there.
Yeah, well, there's a special situation in the north of the country. Of course, very early on in this conflict, Hezbollah decided that it was going to retaliate for the killing of the supreme leader Khamenei by launching rockets and drones across that border from Lebanon into northern Israel. And we understand that there have been some 400 or so rockets so far, drones as well. I think it's the drones that are particularly difficult for the Israelis to counter at the moment. On Sunday, there was some damage reported in trying to shoot down one of these drones that have been fired by Hezbollah into northern Israel. Now, the early warning system as well is particularly stretched in northern Israel. It's been stretched across the country, largely because that American early warning radars have been hit by Iran in the wider Gulf area and in Jordan, and that has reduced the time that Israelis have to get to shelters when those sirens gone off. It was about 10 minutes, now it's down to about 4 minutes. But up in the north, where the launch sites are so close to the targets communities, well, that's that early warning is basically down to very little time indeed. So it's a kind of rolling situation there of pretty much constant sirens for the communities up in the north of the country.
Al Jazeera's Rory Challens in Amman, Jordan. Rory, thanks. Lebanon says more than 500,000 people have been displaced by Israeli attacks. The Israeli army continues to issue forced displacement orders for several areas in the south, but targets have also been hit outside of those forced displacement zones. Bernard Smith has more from Beirut.
The village of Sir El Ghabia is north of the Litani River, supposedly safer ground outside the so-called evacuation zone Israel has declared over southern Lebanon. But there are no front lines in this conflict. 19 people, including women and children, were killed when an Israeli airstrike hit here on Sunday morning. No evacuation order was given in advance.
There are still 400 to 500 families in the village. As regards this massacre, we're used to the enemy and what it does. There's nothing here. It's all children and women and elderly. This was a 3-story building. Nothing shocks us anymore because we've grown used to it.
Israel has also continued to strike targets in Beirut's southern suburbs. And for the first time in the center of the capital, Beirut, 4 people were killed when this seafront hotel was hit. Israel says it was targeting members of Iran's elite Quds military force. The hotel and others around it are full of people displaced from southern Lebanon. More than 112,000 internally displaced Lebanese are living in schools or other empty buildings.
Oh, don't live in
At
schools.
This church,
Trump likes to blow
workers
those
are
up.
being given shelter. Often day laborers. If there's no work, there's no income.
Of course there is fear. There were many strikes where we were. Even the farm and the buildings where we used to work were destroyed. Thank God we managed to leave, even though we came only on the motorcycle and with almost nothing.
I saw the flight and the bomb Iran, where my husband used to work overtime, the place also. So we ran away, we came here.
We were afraid, We were afraid that we might lose our lives there. So no car can take us, to bring us here. So we are really afraid about it,
More than 100 Iranians, including some diplomats, were flown out from Beirut overnight on a Russian plane.
Lebanon's government has banned any activity by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, an important backer of Hezbollah, and it's imposed visa requirements on Iranians entering the country. What it's not done yet is enforce a commitment to disarm Hezbollah, a demand of Israel that risks sparking sectarian conflict here. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Saudi Arabia says 2 people have been killed when a projectile fell on a residential area in the country. Officials say it happened in the central governorate of El Harj, southeast of the capital, Riyadh. Saudi Civil Defense says a military munition fell on the housing quarters belonging to a maintenance and cleaning company. 12 other people have been injured. A special meeting of the Arab League Council has been held to discuss the conflict in the Middle East and the implications for the broader region. Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released this statement, saying the meeting discussed the Iranian attacks on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of several Arab countries, which constitute a flagrant violation of international laws and charters, as well as the principles of good neighborliness. It also addressed the serious risks these actions pose to the security and stability of Arab states in the region. And the Omani Foreign Minister, Badr al-Busaidi, who mediated the U.S.-Iran talks before the war, also released a statement following the meeting. He says the action taken by Israel and the U.S. against Iran is both immoral and illegal, but the retaliation by Iran against its neighbors is also deeply regrettable and unacceptable. I call for restraint on all sides, a ceasefire, and an urgent return to diplomacy. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gatenby is live for us now in Doha. So, Victoria, these statements are quite strong in that they are trying to speak, it appears, with a unified front and putting emphasis on the fact that, hey, we are neighbors here. We have to live together, and this is unacceptable behavior.
That is correct. This is the Arab League projecting unity after 8 days of what has been a barrage of drone strikes and missile strikes across this territory. Now, the Arab League is a 22-member bloc. They met via video conference on Sunday to discuss a unified approach to this and to talk about the Iranian attacks on their territory. They did issue those statements after, in which they tried to take this unified approach to speak with one voice. And they said they had never sought a conflict with Iran, that this wasn't their war to fight. They made the point that they considered Iranian attacks on their territory as a flagrant violation of their sovereignty. They called for Iran to stop escalating this conflict, and they said that they would continue to defend their sovereignty, their citizens, their territory, and of course the millions of people that live on their lands. Now, this comes off the back of a GCC and EU meeting that was held on Thursday, in which a similar statement of unity and solidarity was made. But despite these statements, despite what the Iranian president said yesterday in his taped address, in which he said that the attacks on GCC countries in the region would stop, Iran would no longer target those countries unless land and bases were used on that territory to target Iran. Well, we've heard today, throughout the day, more attacks on Saudi Arabia, on Bahrain, on Kuwait, and on the UAE. The UAE said that it's intercepted 117 drones and 27 ballistic missiles just today.
Victoria Gatenby live for us here in Doha. Thank you very much, Victoria. Well, as the war rages overhead, Palestinians are facing two major threats. There is no protection from missiles and also growing settler violence. Israeli settler attacks have killed 4 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank in just the last 24 hours. Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim reports from Abu Fala.
It was just past midnight on Sunday when a large Israeli settler attack started. Palestinians used rocks to push settlers away, and just as they thought they did, armed settlers opened fire. They killed 2 Palestinian cousins, Fari', 57, and Tha'ir, 24. Both were shot in the head. They died on the spot. 7 others were injured, some by live fire. A 3rd Palestinian died after inhaling tear gas fired by Israeli soldiers raiding the village. 55-year-old Muhammad Murra was in his home. His family tells us he couldn't breathe and tried to escape the tear gas, but could not. The 3 men were laid to rest in the village on Sunday. People here show us how close the illegal Israeli settlement outposts are inching towards them.
We need a president in the United States that's going to fucking put their boot on the neck
We
of
often see
Netanyahu
Israeli settlers
and knock
coming
the
in
shit
smaller
off.
numbers, sometimes 4 or 5, maybe as many as 10, and we flash our lights and then they leave. But this time, we think there was around 100 of them.
The Israeli army has released a statement saying it's investigating the attacks. But many Palestinians say the blatant impunity enjoyed by Israeli settlers has only emboldened them.
From the sky, it's one war. On the ground, it is another. Not only are Palestinians being trapped in a war they did not choose, but they continue to face Israeli settler attacks.
On Saturday, Israeli settlers killed a Palestinian man near his home in Masafer Yatta in the southern occupied West Bank. War or no war, Israeli settler attacks on Palestinians do not stop. But in times like these, they get buried beneath the headlines. The main headline, the US-Israeli war on Iran. But caught in the middle are Palestinians who have no shelter or defense systems. Shrapnel keeps falling across the occupied West Bank, and Palestinian civil defense teams say nearly 100 incidents have been recorded since the war started. Palestinians say Israel's aerial defense systems are built to protect one people and leave the other exposed to wars and settler violence. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank, Palestine.
Hello, you're watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the US, Israel, and Iran. I'm Riley Carlson. Here are the latest developments. Iran names Mojtaba Khamenei to replace his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. There have been more explosions across Tehran hours after Israeli and U.S. attacks on oil facilities caused toxic smoke across the Iranian capital. An 8th U.S. soldier is confirmed killed a day after President Trump paid tributes at a ceremony honoring soldiers who died in the conflict. And the Lebanese government says more than 500,000 people have been forcibly displaced as Israel continues to strike more southern towns. Thank you for joining us. It's 23 GMT, and we have the latest developments in the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran that has spread to large parts of the Middle East and threatens global fuel supplies. We have correspondents in Amman, in Doha, Washington, D.C., and in Tehran. But first, Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei to replace Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader. The supreme leader is Iran's highest political and religious authority. So who is Mojtaba Khamenei? He is Ali Khamenei's second oldest son. The 56-year-old has been a powerful, behind-the-scenes figure in Iran, and while he has not formally held any positions, he wields immense influence. He was a top aide to his father and is seen as a key gatekeeper to his office. He is said to have strong ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. He served in the IRGC Habib Battalion in the 8-year war against Iraq. The announcement was made as large crowds gathered across Iran on one of the most important religious nights of the year. Crowds chanted in support of Mojtaba Khamenei. They said they were ready to serve him and fight in the war. Crowds of prominent supporters have been out on the streets across the country every night. Mohammed Val is live for us in the Iranian capital, Tehran. And Mohammed, probably not surprising that what we're seeing out on the streets is a show of support tonight. What are we hearing from other institutions inside Iran this hour?
Israeli, it might be significant and very symbolic that this night in the Iranian Shia calendar is called the Night of Destiny. The election of a new supreme leader for the country at this crucial moment in this particular night is significant. Yes, you have seen crowds in the streets for the Night of Destiny, but also at the same time, they have been chanting in support of this new election. But not only the people in the streets, we have all the components of the structures of the government, whether military or political, that have come to announce their support for this election. And most importantly, the IRGC, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard, they were the first to announce their support. And we know that the new supreme leader is very close to that corps, and he even served in it. The armed forces also, along with the Basij, the paramilitary corps, have expressed their support for this new election. Supreme National Security Council, that's a very important institution led by Ali Larijani, has also announced its support along with the National Police. We are going to hear, of course, very certainly from the political structures of the country over the next probably few hours, few days, and so on. But the bodies that matter for the war, the operation of the war, and the keeping together of the country and the guaranteeing of its security have already said their word about this election. And that's very reassuring here for the Iranians who support this transition and who support the Iranian revolution. Iran is in a very precarious situation, considering the amount of force that is being used by the Americans or Israelis to break this country, according to the statements here by the leaders. Iran is according to its leaders, under a conspiracy of division and disintegration. The Americans have been trying and are still trying to annihilate the whole Islamic revolutionary structure, and that's what these leaders are saying. It will not happen because they have the resolve, they have the means to guarantee the continuation of the same government, of the same ideology, of the same approach to rule Iran, and that's what's obviously happening so far under the most precarious conditions. The bodies that are in charge of electing a new leader have finally said their word, and apparently they have been working in top secrecy to achieve this under threats of assassination of the whole political body and also assassination of the new supreme leader.
From what we do know, he doesn't appear to be the kind of guy who's going to break with his father's rule and sit down at a table with Donald Trump and give up their nuclear program. It just seems highly unlikely at this point. So the war will continue. He's probably, he appears to be at least as anti-Israel as his father was. He's deeply religious. He went
Everybody's
through all
anti-Israel
the
nowadays.
he is the highest rank. He does get the title Ayatollah, which is the highest rank that you can get in Shiite Islam. And
Everybody's anti-Israel,
so
even here in America.
It's a regime change without much change.
Sinks Josh Shapiro's chances of becoming president in a couple of years.
Suggesting that he might be more
He'll make a
of
nice VP
than his father. Certainly not much signs of a reformist, engagement that could potentially speak with the US.
Jews are not
what
liked
do we know in terms of
and with
President
good
Trump
reason.
again
It's
not
all
taking
Netanyahu's
off
fault.
the possibility of boots on the ground? What are we hearing about the special operations?
Well, Bloomberg does have a story on the terminal today about how Trump and his administration is considering, but it's in the early stages, a plan that special forces would go into Iran, to secure the enriched uranium that would allow Iran to make a nuclear weapon. This would be far off. I mean, Trump has said, he told reporters yesterday that that would only happen if they would face no resistance. And at the moment, that is not even a remote possibility. So
we're going to attack this coming weekend?
That may change over the year. His press secretary
Can't
was on
believe
our
Trump.
Sunday shows earlier today and said that he takes nothing off the table, from special forces to regular forces on the ground to continued bombings. There's no sign of any let up yet.
Wendy, thank you. Bloomberg Senior Editor Wendy Benjaminson. Now let's get more on the surge in oil prices, almost reaching 110 a barrel. Now joining us is Sarah Vakshuri. She's founder and president at SVB Energy International.
110 a barrel,
Sarah,
baby.
it's good to have you on the program today. I mean, we are looking at the contracts on the front end approaching 110. What can perhaps provide a sort of ceiling? Do you even see one with oil prices surging in such a manner?
No ceiling, no ceiling, no ceiling.
I do remember we had a discussion last week this time when the market was opening right after the war was broke between Iran, Israel, and U.S. So we started, the market was in the range of 70s, as you said. Right after 1 week, we are in about above 100. And last week, the expectations of the market was this is going to end somehow soon. It's going to be contained. There was no expectations of sheer impact on the energy infrastructure in the region and also production of the region. So what has happened, even though that the energy market showed significant resilience, and comparing it with the previous oil shocks, let's say in 70s, we have some changes. We have obviously multiple suppliers in the market, U.S. oil going from different routes, the alternatives that are not passing through the Strait of Hormuz, diversity in the market, diversity of different sources of energy all together, plus the data and access to data, the algorithmic pricing, all of that, if you put it as the resilience of market, and on top of all of them, China's stockpile of oil, which has been significantly, China in the past 2 years was stockpiling oil. None of them, as we see entering to the second week, stop the market to surpass the $100. And why that is happening? Because we saw two major impact on the energy resources and flow from the region. Number one is the attacks and the strikes on the energy facilities in multiple producing countries in the region. And the second one is that the Strait of Hormuz, the oil flow from there, as even before Iran physically closed them, the insurance company kind of stopped insuring the tankers voluntarily not passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And that caused the storages in the producing countries to fill up. And as you said in your earlier report, the country's major producers starts one by one announcing that they have to reduce their production because there's no way for them to store more.
Sarah, what was interesting to me as some of these nations find alternative ways to get their crude around is how the Saudis are using their Red Sea terminals. You're seeing record amounts flowing there. Do you have a sense of perhaps among these Gulf nations which are a bit less vulnerable to these strikes from Iran and the impact on both infrastructure as well as getting their crude around?
Again, I like to distinguish these two from each other in terms of flow of energy. Definitely Saudi Arabia has the highest resilience because of the access to Red Sea, UAE to certain degree, but in terms of the assets, energy assets being secure from the strikes, there has been some interesting things happening last week. So the first day of the strikes on energy infrastructure, Iranian foreign minister came to the media and said that the Iranian military, since the major commanders have been killed, is acting independently and in isolation, suggesting that already, whoever is ruling the country, the president, the foreign ministry, they have no access to the military. They are attacking and striking based on initial guidelines they had for defending the country when they go into the survival mode. Then toward the end of the week, we had Iranian president apologizing from the neighboring country and saying that this is not going to happen again, and they are going to contain they're going to prevent any strike. However, the strikes from U.S. and Israel on Iran have been intensified. They target Iranian refineries, the energy storages, and also a water desalination plant in Qesh, which later when it was approved that the strike happened from Bahrain, Iranian retaliated on water desalination plant in Bahrain. So not only energy infrastructure, but food security, because a lot of the food to the region comes from the Strait of Hormuz, and also water security. There is a lot of uncertainty around them. And again, as U.S. is intensifying its attacks and strikes against Iran, all of this is just intensifying the risks against these countries, as Iranian government is trying to reach out to the neighbors and try to somehow contain the situation. The higher the intensity of the attacks gets against Iran, the higher percentage of potential attacks on energy infrastructure, water infrastructure increases in the region, which is really unfortunate.
Sarah, we heard on Truth Social from President Trump talking about the short-term price to pay being a short-term elevation in oil prices. We also had the Energy Secretary trying to reassure markets. Take a listen.
We have that oil. We have the world is very well supplied with oil right now. The United States is a net oil exporter. We're a net natural gas exporter. We are suffering high prices, not in natural gas, but in oil, because it's a globally connected market. We're communicating with our allies abroad. The oil is there. You're seeing a little bit of fear premium in the marketplace, but the world is not short of oil today or natural gas.
Sarah, do you agree with that assessment? And internally within the U.S., how quickly can U.S. shale ramp up?
So in terms of agreeing, yes, there's no short of oil because even the attacks on infrastructure did not really interrupt the oil production or export facilities. So it's really the matter of shipments happening from Strait of Hormuz. And we've seen that the U.S. Administration, President Trump administration, suggested that they're going to reinsure and support both in terms of escorting and also giving insurance to the tankers, so the movement of the flow of oil will start happening again. But the question is that for how long? Most of this oil is not going to the United States. Yes, as it was mentioned by Secretary Wright, it's a global price, so it has impact on U.S. prices. But a lot of this oil goes to China mostly, and also a non-U.S. market. So for how long U.S. is going to insure those cargoes? So again, there's a lot of uncertainties. The oil is there. But when the security in the region, the risk needs to reduce so the tankers could easily flow and move. So I would say while President Trump wants to intensify and increase the intensity of attacks against Iran, on the other side, we cannot have the de-escalation or de-risking the threats against the oil, at least the flow of oil, and also the infrastructure in the region. So this cannot happen. On the shale side that you mentioned, definitely as the oil prices increases, and unfortunately the uncertainty and threats against infrastructure in the region increases, on the other side, it quickly incentivizes the investment in the shale and also Venezuela, because now they're perceived as a very low risk investment and higher prices. So depending on how long these higher prices and the risk in the region is going to persist, it's going to be a big gain in terms of investment for shale and Venezuela, which is kind of Western Hemisphere's energy supplies. And production, also export. But again, what we see again with the leadership change in Iran and President Trump's announcement for...
Sarah, we're going to have to leave it there. We really appreciate your time for us. So Sarah Vakhturi, founder and president at SVB Energy International. Coming up, much more on how Asia is navigating the fallout from the war in Iran, these surging oil prices. We'll be speaking to Vanguard about inflation risks later this hour. Plus, a closer look at the energy impact on Japan with the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Much more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Jennifer Zabasaja in the Lesotho Highlands, and this is Bloomberg.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything. Tune in to Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
We got to talk crypto.
From the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead.
What's the conversation around your company?
Bringing you insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy.
Planning very big things.
A new level of premium.
Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
The floodgates of innovation are going to open up.
You can't fake passion. You either are or you aren't.
Bloomberg Business Week Daily. Every business day at 2 p.m. Eastern, only on Bloomberg.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend.
Breaking news today from Wall Street to Washington.
Earnings season is underway. We're going to get some key reports.
Everything you need to know before the markets open on Monday.
Introducing Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine.
Guys, buckle up.
broad weakness when it comes to Australian shares in the first sort of 20 minutes or so of trade, other than those energy stocks. So take a look at what we're trading when it comes to crude prices. Is that really elevated level surging as major Middle East producers cutting back production. The Strait of Hormuz remaining essentially closed at this point. The US, in the meantime, has threatened to deepen the Iran conflict. It's already driven up prices of crude and nat gas. We're seeing that surge continuing into the Asian session. Of course, all of this is flowing through to fears of a more elevated, faster pace of inflation, in addition to the cooling that we saw in the US labour market data on Friday, potentially cause for concern as to what central banks will have to do from here. Some winners, though, clearly will be the energy names. You can see the likes of Woodside Energy, Santos surging in the early part of the trade, advancing after we saw that oil spike above $100 a barrel there. We've also heard that the UAE, Kuwait have started cutting back on output. As I mentioned, the Strait of Hormuz remains shut. Storage is rapidly filling up there as well. Let's bring Garfield Reynolds, who leads our Bloomberg MLab Asia coverage, and who better to bring us, really the broad view of there is an area or corner of this market that's not feeling the impact now, despite, of course, at the start of this conflict, seeing kind of a slow start to panic.
Yeah, the markets were slow to price in anything even approaching a worst case scenario on as far as how long the conflict might last and how disruptive it would be. There were plenty of doubts as to whether a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which only carries a fifth of crude supplies for the globe and a significant proportion of natural gas, that would be enough to seriously disrupt global supplies and send crude significantly higher. Those doubts have been wiped away now, so you've got investors rushing to price in something that they really had not perceived as a long-term threat. We have, after all, had years of lessons for dip buyers that big declines in risk assets are the moment to pile in because they'll come roaring back. There doesn't look like there's going to be a roaring back scenario for risk assets for at least a while, the way things are positioned now.
We were hardly paying attention to payrolls until they came and surprised the market. That, in addition to more elevated inflation prospects, where does that leave the Fed and really other central banks as well?
Well, it leaves the Fed very much sidelined. Concerns about this level of labour market weakness would seem to keep them away from hiking rates, you would imagine, unless things get even worse. But by the same token, what's going on with crude, and there's been a significant increase in inflation expectations for the US, that tells you that they're not about to cut interest rates, certainly not at this meeting. So, yeah, the Fed is going to be sidelined. It's going to be facing a very difficult set of outcomes. For the rest of the globe, it's just central bankers being pushed towards hikes. ECB hikes are being priced in.
Garth, we have those data points out of the U.S. this week following on the jobs data, right? Some inflationary clues that are set to come through. But I wonder what's your sense of, amid all this, the extent in which we're going to see a really bad open for the likes of Japan as we watch for, the energy factor being a bigger consideration for markets?
Oh, absolutely. Japan, like much of Asia, is very dependent on oil and gas imports, and in particular oil and gas imports from the Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz, which is closed. So, that's a major concern. You also have, the broader impact where if you've got higher energy prices everywhere, there's not a lot of evidence that investors are seriously moving to price in the potential impacts on the AI boom of significantly higher energy prices and significantly higher yields. Those are both things that could stand in the way. We had Oracle deciding to shut down a plan for one data center at the end of last week. We'll be watching for other companies looking to trim back on some of those very large expansion plans So you've got that going on. You've also got the private credit question that's become, very much more imminent, as it were. And Japanese banks are quite exposed to loans to the US, which could go south amid all of this turmoil. So I think we've got Nikkei futures. We're indicating about a 3% drop at the open. That's likely just to be, the starting level. There's plenty of potential they can go significantly lower.
Garth, thank you so much. Garth.
Destroying large missile industrial complex, the way that it can manufacture and launch these missiles, there are still missiles getting through to Israel, and that's despite Israel having huge amounts of protection. It's got American warships off the coast that are shooting down Iranian projectiles. It's got countries that are under the missile flight paths, like where I am in Jordan, that are also shooting down missiles when they're coming in, and Israel has perhaps one of the best air defense systems in the world, dealing with missiles itself, but they're still getting through. Having said all that, though, I think considering that we're dealing with a conflict that is 8 days old, and there have been deaths, but not reaching much more than 11 or so, I think, at the moment. On the home front, I think that Israel will consider that this is more or less a manageable situation at the moment.
Rory Challens, we appreciate your reporting from Amman, Jordan. Thank you. Officials from the United Arab Emirates have reported a large fire in the northeastern coastal city of Fujairah. They said falling debris from an inception had started the blaze in the Fawaz al-Batrikia area. No injuries have been reported. Earlier on Sunday, the UAE condemned what it called brutal and unjustified Iranian aggression. It said more than 1,400 ballistic missiles and drones have been launched against its territory. They have targeted infrastructure and civilian sites, resulting in civilian casualties. A special meeting of the Arab League Council has been held to discuss the conflict in the Middle East and the implications for the broader region. Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released this statement, saying the meeting discussed the Iranian attacks on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of several Arab countries, which constitute a flagrant violation of international laws and charters, as well as the principles of good neighborliness. It also addressed the serious risk these actions pose to the security and stability of Arab states and the region. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gatenby is live for us here in Doha. And Victoria, these statements now from leaders in the Gulf are becoming much more cohesive and really putting the Gulf as neighbors, as a region, and saying sort of we're in this together and we don't like what's happening. All right, I do apologize. We seem to have lost Victoria's audio. We will try to get that sorted for you. Meanwhile, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has told Azerbaijan's leader that Iran was not behind a drone attack on an airport there last week. 4 people were injured when the airport in the Nakhchivan enclave was struck on Thursday. Azerbaijan says 4 drones crossed its border. The Azerbaijani president's office says Pezeshkian has promised an investigation. Lebanon says more than 500,000 people have been displaced by Israeli attacks. The Israeli army continues to issue forced displacement orders for several areas in the south, but targets have also been hit outside of those forced displacement zones. Bernard Smith has more from Beirut.
The village of Sir El Ghabia is north of the Litani River, supposedly safer ground outside the so-called evacuation zone Israel has declared over southern Lebanon. But there are no front lines in this conflict. 19 people, including women and children, were killed when an Israeli airstrike hit here on Sunday morning. No evacuation order was given in advance.
There are still 400 to 500 families in the village. As regards this massacre, we're used to the enemy and what it does. There's nothing here. It's all children and women and elderly. This was a 3-story building. Nothing shocks us anymore because we've grown used to it.
Israel has also continued to strike targets in Beirut's southern suburbs. And for the first time in the centre of the capital, Beirut, 4 people were killed when this seafront hotel was hit. Israel says it was targeting members of Iran's elite Quds military force. The hotel and others around it are full of people displaced from southern Lebanon. More than 112,000 internally displaced Lebanese are living in schools or other empty buildings. At this church, migrant workers are being given shelter, often day labourers. If there's no work, there's no income.
Of course there is fear. There were many strikes where we were. Even the farm and the buildings where we used to work were destroyed. Thank God we managed to leave, even though we came only on the motorcycle and with almost nothing.
I saw the fight and the bomb even where my husband used to work overtime, the place also. So we ran away, we came here.
We were afraid, you know. We were afraid that we might lose our lives there. So no car can take us, you know, to bring us here. So we are really afraid about it, you know.
More than 100 Iranians, including some diplomats, were flown out from Beirut overnight on a Russian plane. Lebanon's government has banned any activity by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, an important backer of Hezbollah, and it's imposed visa requirements on Iranians entering the country. What it's not done yet is enforce a commitment to disarm Hezbollah, a demand of Israel that risks sparking sectarian conflict here. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Let's go back to Victoria Gatenby in Doha for an update on the Arab League Council statements. Victoria.
Yeah, well, the Arab League met on Sunday. They wanted to project a sense of unity in the face of what has been a relentless barrage of missile and drone attacks across this region for 8 days. They met via video conference, 22 member blocks of Arab countries. They discussed Iran's attacks on their territory, and they wanted to come up with some kind of unified official position. Now, they released some statements after their meeting, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and they said pretty much the same thing, that they had not sought conflict with Iran, that they wanted Iran to stop its escalatory actions and attacks on their territory, that this was not their war to fight in terms of the GCC countries and Iran. And they said that they wanted to really stop this flagrant violation of what was attacks on their territory. They said they did not seek conflict and they wanted to defend their territory. They would continue to defend their territory, their sovereignty, their citizens, and all the people that live in those countries.
Victoria Gatenby, thank you very much for that update from here in Doha. And a reminder, you can get more on our website at aljazeera.com for more on our top story, which is the election of Iran's new supreme leader. I'm Riley Carlson, and up next, Inside Story, we'll take a look at who is now in control of Iran.
Tehran has carried out more attacks on Gulf states, despite an apology by the president to Iran's neighbors. Civilian targets have been hit, including airports and vital infrastructure. Who's in control in Iran, and how will Gulf states react as the attacks continue? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. More than a week after Israel and the US attacked Iran, the crisis they've ignited is worsening. While Iran has suffered the most casualties, it's retaliated by attacking neighbouring Gulf states and says it's targeting US military assets. Havens of stability in the region, these countries are vital global hubs for energy, business and aviation. All have been severely disrupted, with the impact felt across the world. From Iran, mixed messages add to the chaos. Apologies from the president for the attacks, yet they have continued. Questions now about who's actually in control in Iran. Unpredictability too from US President Donald Trump about his plans, strategy and aims in bombing Iran. So what does all this mean for long-standing US alliances in the Gulf? And what now for Iran's relations with the Gulf states? We'll speak to our panel of guests in a moment, but first this report from Imran Ullah Khan.
Tehran seems to be sending out mixed messages about how it will proceed in an escalating regional war. Since the US and Israel launched attacks on Iran at the end of last month, Tehran has been retaliating against countries in the Gulf that host US military assets. But as well as bases, the attacks have hit hotels, airports, embassies, and more. in Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, causing anger amongst Gulf leaders. On Saturday, President Masoud Pezeshkian apologized for the strikes and said they would stop.
We do not intend to conduct an assault on neighbouring countries, but like I've said before, they are our brothers. We have to be hand in hand with our brothers in peace, and the Interim Leadership Council approved a decision yesterday. That decision